Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you lost track of who you were? Not because they asked you to, not even because they hurt you, but because slowly, quietly, and without warning, you began handing over pieces of your soul just to keep the connection alive. It starts small. A compromise here, a silenced opinion there. You tell yourself you're being patient, kind, loyal, that this is what love is supposed to be, a sacrifice. But there comes a moment, often late, often alone, when you look in the mirror and wonder who the hell is looking back. And that's the moment everything changes. Because love isn't supposed to cost you your peace. Real connection never asks you to shrink. And yet, for many of us, the hidden truths of relationships remain just that, hidden, cloaked in charm, drenched in nostalgia, disguised as potential. And the price of that blindness? Years, energy, sometimes the best parts of who we were meant to become. The Stoics knew this. They saw relationships not as fairy tales, but as mirrors, brutally honest, profoundly revealing, and often the fastest path to self-mastery or self-destruction. As Marcus Aurelius warned, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. I would add, and of the people you keep closest to it. That's why this conversation matters. Because clarity is the beginning of power. Today, we're peeling back the curtain. We're uncovering the silent signs, the psychological traps, and the emotional patterns that keep us bound to people who drain us under the illusion of love. This isn't about bitterness. It's about awakening. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were slowly handed away, one quiet compromise at a time. In this video, we'll explore the truths many are too afraid to face, but all of us need to hear. Not to fear love, but to finally recognize the difference between what feels good and what is good. If you've ever felt lost in love, confused by connection, or unsure if your loyalty is saving you or slowly erasing you, this message is for you. And if that resonates, if you find something here that speaks to your soul, I ask that you like this video, subscribe to Stoic now, and share this with someone who's still giving too much to the wrong heart. Because healing starts with truth, and truth starts here. Now take a deep breath and follow me into the silence beneath the surface, where clarity lives and real strength begins. Number 1. The illusion of connection. There's a kind of warmth that feels like fire, bright, consuming, impossible to ignore. And when you meet someone who brings that heat into your life, it's easy to mistake intensity for intimacy. They smile, and your guard lowers. They speak with charm and conviction, and your heart leans in before your mind catches up. It feels electric, effortless, and yet something quietly feels off. But you bury it, because who questions magic when it finally shows up? This is the illusion of connection. It's the performance of closeness without the foundation of truth. It's someone knowing exactly how to say what you need to hear, but not living it. It's attention without intention, and often, it's manipulation dressed in emotional fireworks. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But what if you never stop to question what's actually happening to you? What if the smiles, the softness, the sweet words are part of a script, not sincerity? I knew someone once, a friend named Jason. After a long, painful breakup, he met someone new. She was radiant, the kind of woman who lit up a room and made him feel seen again after months of feeling invisible. She remembered small things about him, like his coffee order or the way he twisted his ring when he was nervous. She told him he was different, real, safe. At first, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. After all the pain, she felt like a fresh start. But within weeks, subtle patterns emerged. She'd disappear emotionally anytime he needed support. If he voiced concern or confusion, she'd flip it on him. Suddenly, he was the one being too sensitive or overanalyzing. And yet, in public, she held his hand tightly, spoke of future plans, and told their friends how lucky she felt. Jason started to question his instincts. Maybe he was too needy. Maybe his trauma from his last relationship was making him paranoid. Maybe he was the problem. That's how illusions work. They disorient. They distort your sense of what's real. And before you realize it, you're walking through fog, convinced the light ahead is love, when it's just a reflection bouncing off a wall. The Stoics warned us not to be swayed by surface impressions. They believed truth was not loud, it was still. You had to slow down to see it. But in modern relationships, we often move so fast toward the feeling of connection, We don't give ourselves time to observe the person behind the performance. Connection without safety is chaos. Charm without integrity is control. And real love? It's not always fireworks. Sometimes it's a soft consistency that doesn't overwhelm, but anchors. Sometimes it's a quiet presence that asks nothing of you but your truth. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't rewrite your reality. It doesn't vanish when you draw a boundary. The illusion of connection thrives on your silence. It depends on you not questioning, not reflecting, not looking beneath the surface. But when you begin to observe with clarity, when you start asking the uncomfortable questions, something powerful happens. You begin to see the cracks in the performance. You notice that their affection only shows up when they want something, that they're only available when it serves their narrative, that they mirror your dreams but never reveal their own. It's a hard truth to swallow, because who wants to admit that what felt like love might have only been a transaction in disguise? And yet, clarity is not cruelty. It's compassion for yourself. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts," he was pointing us back to awareness, to the sacred responsibility of discernment. Because not every connection is nourishment. Some are emotional sugar highs, temporary, addictive, and quietly corrosive. So if you're watching this and you're starting to recognize a familiar pattern, pause. Not in fear, but in strength. Ask yourself, does this person show up when I'm not at my best? Do I feel more secure or more uncertain around them? Am I seen or just used? These questions aren't accusations. They are invitations into your own clarity. Because connection should never cost you your self-respect. An affection that disappears at the first sign of your truth is not love. It's theater. The Stoics teach us that the only thing within our control is ourselves, our perception, our choices, our values. We can't change someone else's script, but we can stop playing the role they wrote for us. You deserve more than scripted intimacy. You deserve more than a love that only thrives when you're silent. And the first step to finding it is daring to see the illusion for what it is. Number 2, the weight of giving alone. Some relationships don't fall apart in explosions. They dissolve quietly through the slow erosion of balance. You find yourself always leaning in, always reaching out, always adjusting, while the other person remains still, comfortably unmoved. This is the anatomy of a one-sided relationship. It doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with small imbalances you dismiss as temporary. You're the one remembering the dates, planning the meetups, offering the apologies, even when you were the one hurt. You convince yourself it's a season, a stressor, a phase. You tell yourself they'll come around. But what if they don't? What if they're perfectly fine with you doing the emotional heavy lifting? What if, to them, your endless giving is not admirable, but expected? The Stoics taught us that anything unsustainable will eventually collapse under its own weight. And when one soul is pouring while the other only receives, the collapse is not a matter of if, but when. I once spoke with a subscriber, let's call her Melissa. She had spent nearly 5 years in a relationship where she felt like the emotional caretaker. Her partner never showed up when she was sick, never asked about her day, never apologized after sharp words. But Melissa kept loving harder. She gave more, hoping it would inspire change. She wrote, "It wasn't that he treated me terribly. It's that he treated me like I was optional, even when I made him a priority." That's the quiet cruelty of one-sided love. It doesn't scream. It drains. And perhaps the most dangerous part? It makes you doubt your worth not through pain, but through indifference. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And I believe one of the ways we waste ourselves is by loving people who never plan to meet us halfway. So what are the signs? 1. You feel like an emotional landfill. They vent. They complain. They unload. But when you speak, their gaze drifts, their attention wanes. You're not a person. They see you as a relief valve. Not a partner, just a container. 2. Your needs are always postponed. You ask for time, affection, reassurance, and they call you needy. They make you feel guilty for wanting the very things a relationship should naturally offer. 3. You're always the one compromising. You change your schedule. You downplay your feelings. You mold your boundaries to avoid conflict. Meanwhile, they remain inflexible, unbothered by your bending. 4. Affection becomes currency. They're loving when they want something, sweet when you've done something for them. Their warmth isn't a choice, It's a transaction. And 5, you're exhausted. Not from arguments, but from trying to be enough for 2 people. This kind of exhaustion isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. It seeps into your confidence, your creativity, your sense of self. You begin to wonder if maybe love is supposed to feel like this. If maybe all relationships require one person to carry the weight. But the Stoics would disagree. Epictetus taught that love, like virtue, must be mutual to be sustainable. It must be rooted in respect, not dependence. In contribution, not consumption. When only one person is investing, what you have isn't a relationship, it's an arrangement. And often, it's an unspoken contract. Your value in exchange for their presence. But presence without participation is just proximity. And proximity without reciprocity is a prison. So if you find yourself always apologizing first, always giving more, always explaining your worth to someone who doesn't see it, pause. Not in weakness, but in awareness. Ask yourself, am I loved or am I useful? Do they care or do they just benefit? If I stopped giving, what would remain? These aren't questions of blame. They're questions of clarity. And clarity is what the Stoics called the highest form of strength, seeing life as it is, not as we wish it to be. It takes courage to admit that you're the only one showing up fully. It takes even more to stop overfunctioning, to stop giving from a place of fear, to stop proving your worth through exhaustion. Because the right person won't let you give until you break. They'll meet you, stand with you, grow beside you. And until that person arrives, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Your peace is not a sacrifice you owe to someone else's comfort. Your effort is not a debt you must pay to be loved. So take a breath, step back, and remember what Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength to stop explaining. Strength to stop chasing. Strength to start choosing yourself. Number 3, the silent destroyers. Destruction doesn't always come crashing through the door. Sometimes it walks in slowly, smiling, soft-spoken, seemingly harmless. It wears the disguise of concern, the mask of love, the perfume of protection. And before you realize it, the damage has already been done, not to your body, but to your boundaries. These are the silent destroyers in relationships. Not the ones who scream or hit or threaten, but the ones who manipulate with words, who twist your reality with practiced charm, who leave you questioning whether what you feel is even real. The Stoics taught us that the most dangerous enemy is often the one within. But they also warned of the subtle tyrants who operate just outside our skin, those who challenge our sense of self not with violence, but with persuasion. Seneca once wrote, "He who does not control himself will be controlled." And in many relationships, that control isn't taken, it's slowly handed over. Through guilt, through gaslighting, through the unspoken suggestion that your truth is too inconvenient to be honored. It begins innocently enough. You share a feeling. They say you're overreacting. You recall an event. They say you've remembered it wrong. You set a boundary. They say you're being cold. At first, you defend yourself. But over time, you begin to wonder if maybe they're right. You start editing yourself before you speak. You rehearse your tone before you express anything real. And eventually, you learn to stay silent, not out of peace, but out of fear. That's the genius of silent destroyers. They make you doubt your own inner compass. I remember a man, let's call him Andre, who was engaged to someone everyone described as graceful, charming, articulate. In public, she was attentive and poised. She made him laugh, praised his work, complimented his family. She seemed ideal, but in private, she was different. Every decision he made without her input was framed as a betrayal. Every hour spent apart was called neglect. If he shared an opinion she didn't like, she'd sulk for days, making him feel like the villain in a story he didn't even know he was part of. When he finally confronted her, she wept, told him he misunderstood her, that she only acted that way because she loved him too much. And so the cycle reset. Love used as a leash. Andre didn't leave for another 2 years. By then, he said, he didn't even recognize his own reflection, not in the mirror, but in his choices. This is the slow erosion of the self that silent destroyers orchestrate. They don't explode, they infiltrate. And the battlefield isn't your home, your career, or your future. It's your mind. Gaslighting is one of their favorite weapons. It's a subtle psychological sabotage that makes you question your own memory, your own instincts, even your own sanity. One moment, you're sure of what happened. The next, you're apologizing for having brought it up at all. Another tactic? Covert sabotage. You make progress. They undercut it with backhanded compliments or concerns. You share a dream. They remind you of your limits, not your potential. They don't need to destroy you directly. They simply guide your doubt to do it for them. And perhaps the most chilling strategy of all, jealousy dressed as devotion. They don't trust your friends. They're suspicious of your family. They insist on knowing where you are, who you're with, how long you'll be gone. Not out of protection, but out of possession. It's control wrapped in the language of love. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe that love must always feel like a tight grip on your freedom. That safety requires submission. That closeness means constantly walking on eggshells. But the Stoics taught us that the soul was not meant to be caged. True love does not diminish you. It expands you. So how do you recognize a silent destroyer? You feel smaller around them, even when they claim you're their everything. You feel tired after every conversation, even though they never raise their voice. You begin to shrink not from trauma, but from tiny, consistent betrayals of your truth. And the worst part? They make you complicit. They make you feel responsible for the very harm they're causing. But hear this, your clarity is not cruelty. Your boundaries are not betrayal. Your decision to protect your peace is not a punishment. It is, as Marcus Aurelius would say, the exercise of reason and virtue, the two qualities that make us free. If someone's love demands you sacrifice your peace, your confidence, your identity, that's not love. It's erosion. And no matter how softly it arrives, no matter how sweet it sounds, anything that quietly destroys who you are is not worthy of who you're becoming. So take this moment, right now, as a line in the sand. Choose clarity over confusion. Choose freedom over performance. Choose to stand tall in your own truth, even if it means standing alone for a while. Because the greatest peace you'll ever feel is the one that comes when you stop living in fear of someone else's approval. Number 4, how trauma bonds create illusions. Not all bonds are built from love. Some are forged in pain, twisted together in the fires of trauma, loss, and unmet needs. And the danger of these bonds isn't that they feel bad. It's that they feel like home. You meet someone. The chemistry is intense. They understand your wounds in a way no one else ever has. You open up, and they don't flinch. You share your fears, and they echo them back to you. It feels like fate, like healing, like finally, someone sees you. But soon, that connection begins to shift, not into peace, but into chaos. The highs are euphoric. The lows are devastating. And every argument, every wound, is followed by passion so intense, you confuse it with love. That's not love. That's a trauma bond. It's a psychological phenomenon where intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable mix of reward and punishment, creates a deep emotional dependency. Think of it like a slot machine. You never know when the good moment is coming. So you keep playing, keep trying, hoping the next pull will bring that rush again. Scientifically, it's driven by a dangerous loop of cortisol and dopamine. Stress spikes your fear of abandonment. Then, when the conflict resolves, dopamine floods your system. The relief feels so good, you start associating the pain with connection. Over time, you begin to crave the cycle. Not the person, but the emotional roller coaster they create. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience gave it a name. They warned of becoming slaves to our passions, of mistaking turbulence for depth. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too, and what it demands of you. And your nature does not demand chaos. It demands peace. But trauma bonds are convincing. They whisper stories like, no one else will understand me like they do. This is what passion feels like. I know they hurt me, but they've been through so much. I can't abandon them. Suddenly, their pain becomes your responsibility. Their instability becomes your excuse. Their inability to love you properly becomes your mission to heal them. This is the trap. I once received a message from a woman named Tara. She had been in a relationship for 3 years with someone who had a history of abandonment and childhood trauma. He would disappear for days, then return with tears and promises. He'd rage, then collapse in his shame. Each time he left, she felt shattered. Each time he came back, she felt whole again. But she wasn't healing. She was hooked. She wrote, It felt like every moment apart was unbearable, but every moment together was survival. I wasn't in love, I was in withdrawal. That's the truth no one tells you. Trauma bonds mimic addiction. You become dependent on the cycle, on the brief moments of tenderness that come after the storm, on the idea that your love can be the cure. But the Stoics teach us, we are not the healers of other people's wounds at the cost of our own. Yes, people are broken. Yes, many carry pain. But that doesn't mean their storm should become your sky. So how do you break free? The first step is awareness. Name it. Stop calling it fate. Stop calling it passion. Call it what it is, a pattern rooted in pain, not partnership. Then comes separation. Emotional, physical, spiritual. Not out of hate, but out of protection. As Epictetus wrote, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And finally, comes reclamation. Rebuilding your sense of self without their chaos defining your days. This won't be easy. Trauma bonds fight back. You'll miss the intensity. You'll crave the familiar hurt. But every time you choose quiet over crisis, you reclaim a piece of your soul. Journaling can help. Write about the patterns. Document the cycles. Remind yourself of how often pain followed connection. Turn your emotional data into clarity. Community helps too. Surround yourself with people who offer love that doesn't come with conditions. People who show up on ordinary days, not just after the damage. And above all, self-compassion. You stayed because you were wired to seek relief. Not because you were weak, but because your nervous system thought chaos was connection. But you know better now. And knowing is the beginning of liberation. Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So if someone taught you that love means pain, rewrite that lesson with your life. Show yourself that love can be steady, that safety isn't boring, that peace isn't emptiness, it's freedom. Because the truth is, the strongest bond you'll ever build is the one with your own clarity. And when that bond is secure, no trauma can tempt you back into chaos disguised as care. Number 5, the loyalty trap. It's one of the hardest questions to answer. Why do people stay in relationships that slowly erode their spirit? Not because they're weak, not because they're blind, but because at their core, they're loyal. They believe in commitment. They hold on to hope with both hands, even when that hope is cutting into their skin. And that's the trap. Loyalty becomes a leash. Good people stay in bad relationships not out of foolishness, but out of faith. They see the potential. They remember the good times. They hold on to the flicker of who the other person used to be, or who they could still become. You tell yourself they're just wounded, that they didn't mean it, that if you just love them a little harder, a little longer, they'll finally see you the way you see them. But Seneca reminds us, a gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver. An intention is where many good people lose themselves. Because you intend to heal, you intend to forgive, you intend to build something lasting. But what is their intention? Do they intend to grow? Do they intend to meet you halfway? Do they intend to treat your heart as something sacred, not something disposable? That's the painful pivot. When you begin to measure not just what you're giving, but what's being returned. Not in grand gestures, but in daily presence. In consistency. In respect. I once spoke with a man named Cole. He'd been with his partner for 6 years. She was brilliant, magnetic, unpredictable. Their early days were full of laughter and passion. But over time, things changed. She became distant, cold, then explosive. Arguments would erupt from nowhere, then fade just as quickly. But every time he threatened to leave, she'd break down, profess her love, and promise change. He stayed, year after year, because he remembered her laugh. Because she once said he was the only person who truly saw her. Because he thought leaving would mean he failed her. But what he didn't realize was this. You don't fail someone by walking away from their self-destruction. You fail yourself by staying in it. Cole said, I thought my patience was proof of love, but I was really just afraid that leaving men I gave up too soon. That fear is common. We're told that quitting means we didn't try hard enough. But the Stoics never taught blind endurance. They taught discernment. Epictetus put it clearly. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. What's in your power is your presence, your kindness, your boundaries. But whether someone meets you there, that is not yours to control. And often, good people stay because they fear loneliness more than mistreatment. They fear the silence after goodbye. They fear the empty bed, the missing routines, the sudden absence of someone who, even in their dysfunction, had become familiar. But here's the truth. Being alone is painful, yes. But being with someone who makes you feel alone? That's soul-wrecking. There is a kind of silence in a one-sided relationship that echoes louder than solitude ever could. Sometimes, good people stay because they mistake emotional labor for love. They take pride in being the strong one, the understanding one, the rescuer. But love that only exists when one person is bleeding for two is not love. It's martyrdom. And you weren't born to be a martyr for someone else's avoidance. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and asked, "Why do I keep staying?" the answer might not be weakness. It might be that you have a heart too big for your own good. A heart that believes in second chances, that wants to see the best in people, that loves deeply, fully, even when it hurts. But even the biggest heart needs protection. And protection starts with truth. Ask yourself, if I met them today, would I still choose them? Am I in love with who they are, or who I want them to be? Am I staying out of love or out of fear? These aren't indictments. They're invitations. To be honest, to stop performing emotional CPR on a relationship that's flatlined. Because love, real love, doesn't require you to betray yourself in the name of loyalty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if your thoughts are constantly tied in knots trying to decipher someone else's moods, justify their absence, or prove your worth, your soul will slowly fade into colors that don't belong to you. So don't just ask if they love you. Ask if being with them helps you love yourself more. Because the right person won't make you feel like loving them is a full-time job. They'll meet you in your peace. They'll honor your effort. They'll be a witness to your soul, not a weight on it. And until that person comes, choose yourself. You deserve more than loyalty to someone who's disloyal to your well-being. You deserve the kind of love that feels like returning to yourself, not running from it. Number 6, the power of boundaries. Boundaries. The very word can feel cold, harsh, even selfish, especially if you've spent your life believing love means saying yes, even when it hurts. But in truth, boundaries are not walls to keep others out. They are the sacred lines that keep you whole. They are not ultimatums. They are declarations of value. They are not punishments. They are protections. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But what if your way of thinking has been shaped by years of people-pleasing? By trauma? By a culture that taught you to equate kindness with compliance? Then your first step toward peace isn't about thinking better. It's about defending better. Because here's what no one tells you. Most of your exhaustion is not from what you do, but from what you tolerate. The late-night conversations that leave you depleted. The texts you respond to out of guilt. The relationships you maintain out of obligation, not connection. And this is where the power of boundaries comes in. Not as a weapon, but as a lifeline. Boundaries say, "I love you, but I love me too." They say, "I will show up, but not at the cost of my soul." They say, "This is who I am, and this is what I won't sacrifice, not even for you." I knew a woman named Laura, kind to a fault. She would drop everything for anyone. She loaned money she didn't have. She listened to others' problems while drowning in her own. She stayed in friendships where she was clearly being used because she believed saying no made her a bad person. But her kindness wasn't being honored, it was being consumed. Until one day, after another friend canceled plans for the 4th time, Laura didn't say, "It's okay." She said, "I felt hurt by that." And just like that, everything shifted. Because here's the hidden beauty of boundaries. They reveal who's really with you. When you start setting them, some people will push back. They'll call you difficult, selfish, cold. But that's not because you've changed. It's because you've stopped making their comfort more important than your own capacity. Real love doesn't fear boundaries. It respects them. If someone only loves the version of you that's endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, endlessly quiet, they don't love you. They love control. And the Stoics would say, that which seeks to control you is not your ally, it is your tyrant. So what do boundaries actually look like? They look like telling a friend, "I can't talk right now, but I care about you. Let's find time later." They look like pausing before replying, asking yourself, "Do I want to do this, or do I feel I have to?" They look like protecting your morning peace, your creative hours, your mental health. They look like choosing not to justify your every decision just to make someone else feel comfortable. One powerful practice is boundary journaling. Each night, write down, where did I feel drained today? Did I say yes when I meant no? What boundary would have protected me? This isn't about guilt. It's about growing awareness. Because you can't defend what you don't even realize is being violated. Another tool? Boundary phrasing. Simple, clear statements like, I can't take that on right now. I need time to process before I respond. That doesn't work for me. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain. You just need to honor yourself. Because when you protect your peace, your energy becomes sacred again. Your presence becomes a gift, not an obligation. And the people who respect that, they're your people. And those who don't, Marcus Aurelius would remind you, if someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. But if not, I will hold to my own convictions. Boundaries are your convictions made visible. They are not the end of love. They are the beginning of real love, where both people stand as whole beings, not fragments. So if you've ever felt guilty for needing space, if you've ever silenced your no to protect someone else's yes, if you've ever confused being agreeable with being worthy, it's time to reclaim your ground. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in quiet, firm truth. Because your peace is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. And setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's spiritual hygiene. It says to the world, I know who I am. I know what I need. And I am no longer available for anything less. That is power. That is clarity. That is the beginning of freedom. Number 7, when to cut ties. There comes a moment, not always loud, not always clear, when you realize staying is costing you more than leaving ever could. A moment when the hope you've been holding starts to feel like a chain, not a lifeline. A moment when your spirit whispers, not with rage, but with stillness. This is not where I'm meant to stay. That moment is not weakness. It is clarity. And clarity, according to the Stoics, is the foundation of freedom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But there's another half to that wisdom. If it is not nourishing, do not stay in it. Cutting ties is one of the hardest choices we'll ever face. Not because we don't know the truth, but because we hope it isn't the truth. We hope things will change. We hope they'll wake up. We hope what we once saw in them wasn't just a flicker. But hope is not a strategy. And love without alignment is not a home, it's a maze. Good people often wait too long to leave, not because they're unaware, but because they're full of empathy. They see the potential. They remember the laughter. They wonder, what if I just tried harder? But here's what no one tells you. There's a point where trying harder becomes betraying deeper. So how do you know when it's time to walk away? Start with the body. If you feel constant anxiety before every interaction, if your chest tightens at the thought of another conversation, if your sleep is shallow and your joy feels muted, your body is telling the truth your heart is too kind to say. Then listen to your patterns. If you keep having the same argument over and over, if apologies come without action, if you've shrunk to fit someone else's comfort, those are not growing pains. Those are warning signs. Real relationships evolve. They face challenges, yes, but they don't circle the same drain endlessly. Sometimes, the deepest loyalty you can offer someone is leaving them to face themselves. Because as long as you keep absorbing their dysfunction, they never have to grow. And as long as you stay, hoping your pain will one day be enough to change them, you're slowly teaching yourself that love means enduring neglect. It doesn't. Love doesn't ask for silence. It doesn't demand sacrifice without return. It doesn't thrive on your self-erasure. Epictetus put it plainly. No person is free who is not master of himself. And you cannot master yourself while chained to someone else's chaos. I once spoke with a man named Jared. He had been in a relationship for 8 years. His partner was emotionally unavailable, often critical, and rarely present. But they had history. They had mutual friends. They built a life together. And leaving felt wrong. He told me, it's not that she's cruel. It's just that I always feel small around her. Like who I am is never quite enough. And that's what finally helped him let go. Not a final betrayal, not a dramatic breakup, but the realization that love should not make you smaller. Jared left quietly, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of reverence for his own soul. And that's how it should be. Cutting ties doesn't have to be explosive. It doesn't need to be a declaration of war. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision. I choose peace. It's deleting the number and not saving it again. It's walking away without the need to explain one more time. It's no longer chasing closure from someone who didn't honor you when they had the chance. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will feel like a death. Yes, you'll miss them, even the version of them that never really existed. But that grief is the cost of your freedom, and freedom is always worth it. So if you're listening to this, and there's someone who keeps pulling you into doubt, into fear, into self-abandonment, this is your sign. Not to hate them, not to change them, but to release them. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what stands in the way becomes the way. Sometimes, the obstacle isn't outside you. It's the tie you refuse to cut, the door you refuse to close, the weight you refuse to drop. So drop it, let it fall, and walk, not in bitterness, but in clarity. You're not giving up. You're coming home. Number 8, building back better. After the storm, there's silence. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear yourself again. Not the version of you they molded, not the one who walked on eggshells or doubted their worth, but the you that existed before the noise, before the confusion, before the war between your heart and your boundaries. This is where healing begins, not in forgetting them, but in remembering yourself. Rebuilding after a painful relationship isn't about revenge, reinvention, or proving your worth. It's about reclaiming what was always yours, your time, your energy, your peace, your identity. Seneca said, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." That truth becomes a compass when you're standing in the ashes of a bond that once defined your days. You can't undo the past, but you can decide what happens now. Step 1 is rebuilding your inner home. Start small, with the things they made you feel silly for loving, with the routines that bring you quiet joy, with the habits that remind your nervous system, we are safe now. Right. Walk. Sit in the sun. Take yourself to dinner. You are not waiting to be chosen anymore. You are learning to choose yourself again and again. This isn't selfishness. This is repair. And as the Stoics taught, virtue is not found in others. It is cultivated within. You don't need their apology to find peace. You don't need their recognition to move forward. What you need is consistency. Start with one daily affirmation, spoken not for magic, but for alignment. I do not chase what drains me. I welcome what strengthens me. Another, I am not who they said I was. I am who I choose to become. These are not just words. They're anchors. And don't rebuild alone. Find spaces, friendships, communities, books, quiet cafes that mirror the kind of safety you're now learning to give yourself. You'll be tempted, at times, to romanticize the past, to replay the good moments and wonder if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't so bad. This is your mind craving the familiar, not the healthy. And in those moments, let Epictetus guide you. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Your healing is in your hands, not theirs. One powerful way to anchor your growth is through ritual journaling. Every night, reflect on, what gave me energy today? Where did I feel peace? What am I still carrying that isn't mine? Over time, this becomes a mirror, not of your pain, but of your progress. And maybe the most important step in building back better? Forgive yourself. Not for staying too long, not for trusting, but for the moments when you forgot your own worth while loving someone who couldn't see it. Forgiveness is not softness. It's strength. It says, I will not carry this blame into my future. Because who you were in that relationship is not who you are now. You've seen the illusion. You've chosen truth. You've honored the whisper inside that said, this cannot be my forever. And from that moment on, you began. You began rising. You began shedding. You began becoming. There will be days where grief grips you out of nowhere. Let it. But don't stay there. There will be days where confidence returns in sudden waves. Celebrate it. And there will be days where you feel normal again. Where you laugh without remembering who used to make you laugh. Where you smile and it feels real, not forced. That's not forgetting. That's healing. Marcus Aurelius would remind you, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So use that power. Don't just rebuild, reclaim. Don't just recover, rise. And when the day comes that someone new enters your life, someone kind, steady, open, you'll recognize them not because they sweep you off your feet, but because you no longer feel the need to lose yourself to be loved. You'll see them and think, Ah, this is what peace feels like with another. But until then, stay here, in your own light, on your own terms. Because the most powerful love story you will ever write is the one where you finally come home to yourself. If you've made it here, know this: what you feel is not weakness. It's awakening. You've walked through illusions, confronted silence, faced emotional debts that were never yours to carry. You've seen how love, when twisted by fear or ego, can become a cage disguised as comfort. But clarity is the key that unlocks you. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. What they offered was perspective, an invitation to see pain not as a punishment, but as a path. And you've walked that path today. You've questioned what connection really means. You've named the quiet destroyers. You've stood at the edge of loyalty and asked yourself, what about me? And you've begun to build, stronger, clearer, and more whole than ever before. Remember this: you owe no one your suffering. Not in the name of love, not in the name of history, not in the name of hope. What you owe, to yourself, to the world, is your peace. So if this video has touched something inside you, don't keep that stillness to yourself. Share it. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if you're walking this Stoic path with me, seeking strength, stillness, and truth, subscribe to Stoic now. Join the community that chooses clarity over chaos. Leave a comment below. Your story might be the light someone else needs. And as you go, carry this thought like a shield. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let your thoughts be fierce with self-respect, soaked in truth, and rooted in quiet strength. We are not here to be consumed. We are here to rise, wisely, quietly, deeply. Until next time, be well, be watchful, be free.